Hello everybody, welcome back to Cinema Savvy. It is myself, George, bringing a brand new review, and today I'm going to be reviewing Priscilla, which is out in the UK cinemas this Monday, the 1st of January, of course, the new year. We do get a lot of our releases, ones such as this that have already been out in America, or for some reason get limited engagement runs basically in London, like hardly any cinemas in London. And I have seen the film. I'm going to be talking about it, giving my thoughts on it. I've actually seen 2 Jacob Elordi films this week, so it's weird timing, but still, I might even bring up Saltburn too, who knows. But as always, I do want to hear from people at home, so please do comment your thoughts on Priscilla. If you've seen the film, if you've read the book that this is being adapted from, maybe even your thoughts on the Elvis film from last year. Yes, we're releasing this in 2023, so it is a last year film still, and all that sort of stuff, because this is a really intriguing one. And if I sort of give my thoughts heading into this film, it's a really tricky one heading into. Of course, Sofia Coppola is directing this, has had an incredible career, really intriguing to see her take on this project. I can't sit here and say I know the history of Priscilla Presley. I can't tell you that I know the history of Elvis Presley. So the actual behind the scenes is something I was curious for, how this came to be so soon, of course, after the biopic last year, which obviously Austin Butler starred and directed by Baz Luhrmann, one I very much enjoyed. I still have really good memories with it. So being able to get an insight into some of the other stuff in Elvis's life was something I was curious by. And again, with this film in production, the fact it is called Priscilla, not even the Presley on the end of it, this is going to be her story. We're going to find out more about her. And that's what I was also curious by. Now, of course, every film you see that's an adaptation of a biography, an autobiography, or anything such as that doesn't mean it is completely correct. It's an interpretation, it's an adaptation. But nonetheless, I still wanted to watch this film. And that's kind of where I'm going with this, because when this was announced, there were a lot of people that were criticising, oh, this is a cash grab, or this is like that Bowie film from a couple of years ago, this is like this. And I didn't really think too much of that, if I'm being really honest. I just thought, okay, it's another Elvis film, and if I'm being honest, one of the weaknesses from the Elvis film from last year was glossing over his relationship with Priscilla. So I was actually curious about what they're going to do with this one. I didn't actually see a trailer until last month. It was one of them where, like Ferrari, it gets to Oscar season, and then suddenly the same films are on loop at Cine World over and over and over. So thank God I've ticked off a couple of the big ones already this week, and this did obviously preview early with the Cine World Unlimited screening. But given my initial thoughts on this, I'm sort of stuck in the middle. There's things I really enjoyed about this film. Probably the performances are the biggest positive, if I'm being honest, to begin with. And I'll get into those shortly, and the direction itself. But I am not sure about this as an actual film, as an entire, not concept, but as a final piece. It feels almost too specific that we're only looking at a small portion of Priscilla's life up until to the point she leaves Elvis, which I understand that's where the story needs to go, but it's really tricky to then talk about this film after. And I do think this time of year, certainly people that won't admit it subconsciously, you are looking at Oscars, you're looking at films that are going to be put forward to those. I'm not going to sit here and list off, I think this should be nominated, I think this shouldn't be nominated. I try to avoid doing that. But what I will say is this time of year, again, subconsciously, in my head, I may have a different approach to a film such as this, say if it went out in the summer. And that's what I'm also intrigued by, having watched it. I've thought about it for a couple of days now. And this is where I'm sort of in this crossroads with this. Some stuff I've really enjoyed of this. As I mentioned, it's the stuff that maybe we didn't get in the Elvis biopic from before. I was curious to learn more about Priscilla's story. I'm not going to sit here and say Elvis is a terrible person or anything like that, but I was very also intrigued by the idea that Elvis isn't this sort of white knight that he's presented as in other things. We do get to see a different side to him, and that's also something I'm curious about. As I said, my knowledge isn't there completely, so with the subject matter, I was invested in it. You bring on Sofia Coppola on board. Now, if I'm being really honest with you, I would beg to say that one of the main reasons this film has been made, someone can probably point me out if I'm wrong, please, in the comments if they've said it, but I don't think this film exists without Coppola wanting to direct it, if I'm being honest. I think certainly after the Elvis film last year, people think, no, we don't want to do an Elvis film. I remember when they cast Jacob Elordi, this film was announced. Some people were sort of fuming, oh, it's a cash grab, it's because of this, it's because of that. And I don't think it ever was. I think if it was a cash grab, it would be a big budget blockbuster. It'd be done in line with the entire estate. It'd be authorised, there'd be music, copyrights, all that sort of stuff. If it was a cash grab, it would almost be a continuation of what we had before. But this was never going to be a cash grab. This was someone wanting to tell a different story that does have Elvis Presley in it. And that's where I am also somewhat stuck, trying to think and talk and give my thoughts on this film. And I want to talk about, obviously, I mentioned the story, we get to see Priscilla from a younger age. The two lead performances, I thought, carry this film, if I'm being really honest with you. I don't really have a problem with supporting characters. I don't have a problem if we're not introduced to A, B, and C, D, E, and F all the time, these real life counterpoints. But the two leads are what carries. As you've seen the posters, you've seen the advertising, all these other things. It's a really important thing that they're able to sort of continue through with this, and the film does absolutely rule with Cailee in the lead. If I'm being honest, I think she's the best part of this film. You kind of have to be preparing Priscilla. I know she won the Volti Cup at Venice, I believe. I know this then premiered at the BFI London Film Festival. This was exempt from the strikes. They were able to promote the film as well. And I know that a lot of people make jokes about the height difference with Jacob Elordi as well, but I really enjoy the performances, and I think that's what carries this film. Not only if you cast the leads, it won't work, but because it's telling a somewhat smaller, more intricate story, the power balance between somebody in this sort of lifestyle being thrown into this, now you're with like the biggest musician of his time, and you're a child. Let's not hide around it. That's one thing the film didn't want to talk about last year, and it's something people skirt about. I'm not sitting here trying to make political points. It is a big part of the story that was glossed over for very obvious reasons. And I like that this film takes the time to not only explore them, you get to the relationship of Priscilla and her parents, how they are at the start compared to when the relationship begins to get serious, the impact upon her at school, then it's adapting to this new lifestyle. It's the clothes, it's the costumes, it's you've got to appease him, and when it comes down to the music, if she's got an opinion on the music, it might not go down as well. And I thought it was really interesting to get a lot of that. The only concern I have is I don't know if that really warranted being... I don't like moaning about runtimes, but it did feel like it dragged at times. It's 1 hour 50. It goes up to past the point of Lisa Marie being born, who obviously passed away this year in real life as well. And it's something where I sort of struggled with, where I wish we would have had a bit more time with her. I wish we could have maybe covered a bit more ground. And I know I've just done the Ferrari review where that was my similar criticism. That's very different. They whittled down an entire man's legacy in life into one race in the space of like 2 months. But this is different. We get some good chunks of the time with her, but I just feel that the last sort of 10-15 minutes just it goes adrift somewhat, and I think we're missing out, because I don't think it's a bad film, I don't think it's a particularly great film, but it is one that people will maybe see, it's one people will maybe talk about. I don't know if the casual audience are going to go to it, especially given there's no Presley on the title. Obviously it's not got Elvis in it. A lot of people are probably not going to know this film exists, but for those that are going out to seek it, to find out. I am curious to know what they think too. I want to talk about production design. I love talking about this on period pieces, especially when we're getting into that sort of 50s, 60s time period. I love that side of it. I think, again, with the budget this film had, it did very well with respect to its production, its actual craft as a film. And I think that's something where you can see the competence of Sofia Coppola directing by a country mile. It is one of the biggest assets alongside the performances. And as I said, that is enough to carry the film. Maybe there is a weakish script. The adaptation, obviously I've not read the book, so I can't tell you what the original book is like, if they're pulling stuff, if they're doing the whole thing. But I do think the script is maybe one of the weaker points of the film. But there's enough in the performances for me to sort of gloss over that somewhat at the final product. But the final product itself, it maybe isn't the best of what this could have been. And also, you have to think of the obvious, and it's unfair on this film, but you had the Elvis film from last year, which is a great film that I absolutely loved. I'm a big fan of Baz Luhrmann, and it does make you want to go back and watch that. It does make you want to listen to some of the Elvis songs, and that's not hopefully me coming across as rude or missing the point of this, but it is when there is a biopic and Elvis is in it, you do think of stuff like that. So it's a very tricky film to have been made. And I couldn't imagine the loopholes and things they've got to go through and around to be able to make this the way they did, without the estate being fully on it. I know obviously Priscilla wrote the book it's based off, but it's a really tricky one to talk about. I need to do a bit more reading myself, but it's one I'm curious about to see how this goes down. Will it get any nominations this award season? I don't know. I'm just in that phase at the moment where I'm trying not to take that approach to everything I watch. It's been a phenomenal year for film. If this is to be our last review of the year, I know this is in my eyes a 2024 release here in the UK, but it's been an outstanding year for cinema, especially compared to the last couple of years. By a country mile, the strongest year of the 20s so far. That sounds so weird to say out loud, but and this is another thing that jumps sort of with it, that we are moving on past that COVID cycle. And of course, we have the strikes this year, which is going to massively impact the industry next year. So I'm curious to see what happens again. There's going to be less big films out and a few carryovers, a few things probably being cancelled, but it's great to see these smaller films again. Whereas in the last couple of years, I felt like you're either watching a blockbuster or an Oscar film, chuck in a terrible Netflix streaming film, fine on the side. But it feels great that we have this variety of films coming out again, and it feels like it's slowly coming back to the way it was and it should be. Even me moaning about there's not enough screenings outside of London, that's kind of how it was and it has been for a while. And yes, they do need to make sure there are more screenings outside of London for this, but given this is out in Amazon in the US, you can get a VPN and watch it on Prime, which is clearly what I did, and I've been able to do a few films like this year. So it's a problem distribution has as a whole. But I'm curious to know what people think, and sort of rounding out my thoughts on this one. As I said, it's a tricky one. I think it's well worth watching if you're a fan of Elvis, or if you're curious to know more about Priscilla, her life and her relationship with Elvis. Aside from that, it's a really tough one to recommend, if I'm being honest. Again, this comes down to more what your interests are, what you're looking for in a film, what you're looking for in a biopic. And I think for me, at least, with the limited knowledge of Elvis, I quite liked that aspect of it, that it wasn't this knight in shining armour who is this great musician who's done all these amazing songs and these amazing things. It is very different, and if you have that thoughts going into the film, I think you'll react better to it, like myself. So that's going to do it for this review. A bit different, a bit weirder, a bit more in the middle than others have been recently, but that's how it's going to be. And once again, I'm going to ask people to comment their thoughts on Priscilla, or comment your thoughts on Elvis then. Maybe let me know if you plan on doing it as a double bill. It would be a very interesting one, especially, as I said, in the big film they did gloss over the whole Priscilla stuff, which basically opened the door for this film to be made. So that's going to round out this review. Once again, thank you all for watching. Thank you all for supporting us across this year. It's been one of the biggest years in the channel history. We've had some tremendous stuff that wouldn't be possible for us to do without people at home watching us, supporting us, sharing our stuff, liking our stuff. It really does mean a lot. We don't just say this for the sake of saying it. It's a really great thing we're able to come out here, we're able to watch films early, and we're able to maybe push people towards seeing different types of films or genres and many of those other things, and that will continue into the new year. There's a lot of films I do want to watch next year. There's some big ones. We've got some announcements we need to make. We've got some series we're going to be working on. But until we announce them, the best ways to get us is on our social media accounts, linktree.com/cinemasavvy. You can find us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Letterboxd. We're updating everything on there. We've got our 2023 review playlist now up. This will be the first one of the 2024 releases. Is that? I don't know, actually. I need to sort that. But go on our channel homepage, you'll see everything spread out. You'll see it all organised neatly. So if you do want to have a look at what else we're up to, have a look on there. That's the best place to find our videos too. So once again, thank you all so much, and we'll see you on the next one. Take care.